welcome back to the Aura in Progress podcast, where we explore the latest in jiu-jitsu, strength, conditioning, mobility, and mindset methods to improve your grappling performance. I'm your host, Will Safford, and today on the podcast, we have Coach Ben Z. Coach Ben is the head strength and conditioning coach at the Muscle Pharm facility in Los Angeles, California. He's also a first-degree black belt and owns a few jiu-jitsu schools in the LA area. And Coach Ben is a very experienced strength and conditioning coach. He's a nutritionist and has worked with a lot of jiu-jitsu athletes, MMA fighters, combat athletes who are trying to prepare their bodies to compete and win at the highest level. So today I had a great discussion with Coach Ben. He gets into some areas that I've never really thought of or explored before when it comes to preparing your body for combat. So really cool discussion that we had with Coach Ben. As always, you can check us out at seekprogress.com. We've got 2 free ebooks there now. You can get right on the homepage. One is on mobility and one is on conditioning for jiu-jitsu. So be sure to check out seekprogress.com. As always, you can follow us on Instagram at seek.progress. And without further ado, let's get into the latest episode with Coach Ben Z. All right, and we are back today with Coach Ben Z. Coach, how are you?
I'm good, Will. Thanks for having me.
Right on, man. So for people who don't know about you, can you just kind of tell us about you, your role? I know you work at the Muscle Pharm facility up in LA. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. People just call me Coach Ben. I used to work at Muscle Pharm, but right now we're just closed because of the COVID thing. I do a lot of stuff, so it might take a while. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I own my own academy, School Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I work with fighters that are in the UFC, some that are a little more amateur. I work with jiu-jitsu athletes. I have a couple of other gyms as well. I have a boot camp, and I have another jiu-jitsu academy as well that's in the area. That's, for the most part, I'm just a strength and conditioning coach that's interested in jiu-jitsu and MMA. So that's the short one.
Right on, man. Sounds like you are a busy guy for sure. Can you tell us, during normal times, let's say COVID wasn't an issue, how would you recommend that someone who's a hobbyist who, maybe competes once, twice a year, but wants to improve their performance on the mat, how should they structure their jiu-jitsu time and their strength and conditioning time?
So it's a good question for me because I do work with a lot more hobbyists, I would say, than professionals on just like a ratio base, just because I own the academy. The academy is like 98% hobbyists who are just people, like you said, trying to get better at jiu-jitsu, and maybe like 2% competitors. And of those 2% competitors, maybe like 2 or 3 people that are like serious competitors. And the others, just say they want to be world champion a couple times a year. If it's just a hobbyist or somebody, just an average person trying to get better at jiu-jitsu, structuring your strength and conditioning really just should be based off of recovery. I don't know the exact person that I'm working with, so it would be better if I knew the person, but just as a general recommendation, I would say I wouldn't go over 3 days a week of strength training. If it was somebody who was just a hobbyist in jiu-jitsu, I wouldn't go over something like 3 days a week for just a average guy, girl trying to get better at jiu-jitsu, just because of the recovery. If your goal is to get better at jiu-jitsu, you need to follow the said principle. You need to follow specific adaptations in pose demand. If you're spending more time in the weight room, more time working on mobility and other things, and you're not spending it doing jiu-jitsu, you may be getting a healthier body, you may be getting your body better, but you're not getting better at jiu-jitsu. So I think most of your time should be spent training jiu-jitsu. That's, I try to stick to general concepts when working with clients, as opposed to, kind of getting in the weeds of stuff, right? Like if we can just stick to the said principle, you're going to do mostly jiu-jitsu. Let's say 75% of your training weekly is jiu-jitsu, and 25% of it is strength, mobility, whatever recovery stuff. I think we're good.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that sounds right. Now, if someone was that 2%, I know it's very rare, and most of the listeners listening, they are the hobbyists who are just, trying to add something supplemental to their game to get better. But if you were like an active competitor, you have to worry about, just like you're saying, recovery, overtraining, things like that. What would you recommend to them? Like how many sessions would they do for strength and conditioning along with all the jiu-jitsu they're doing?
Okay, so then their recommendation, I would say, is a minimum of 3 strength sessions per week. That's just strength training too. I think you need to be handling weight pretty frequently if your goal is to make progress in the weight room, right? So how I would structure that, I mean, again, it's still the primary focus should still be on their jiu-jitsu training. It doesn't change that much, but for somebody who is a professional, you probably train twice a day, I would say, jiu-jitsu. In between or at night is what a lot of jiu-jitsu athletes do. You're doing your weightlifting, but I would just conceptually, I would just say the important thing is keeping a good distance between your training sessions. I've had distance as in like a time, so I had athletes that, they tell me they work out 4 times a day, but they get it all done like by 3 p.m. And I'm like, well, so you're working out, like you're basically doing a continuous workout. That I think for a professional or somebody who is a competitor, you just need to space the workouts and the training sessions in a way that I would say at least 4 to 6 hours of rest in between, let your body recover. I would go at least 3 strength training sessions per week. And jiu-jitsu, I mean, you do as much as you can to recover from. You do as much as you need. Some people, it depends on where they are, right? If it's a blue belt that still needs to work on technical stuff, learn moves, for example, right? You may be doing a lot more like regular classes, but if it's a black belt world champion, I work with some black belt world champions. They never, all of their training is tailored toward their specific goal, right? If we're preparing for worlds, we're doing specific training from reverse de la Kiva. We'll start there. It's better to do it that way. There's a lot of reasons why, egos. There's you get more reps from that specific position. If you're a serious competitor, you think about probably tailoring your training, your jiu-jitsu to your whatever it is that you need, right? So I think specific training is everything when it comes to competition training. It's the way to train and not destroy your body. You can't start every roll standing or just flat from the knees. That's kind of where all the tension and all, that's where everything happens, right? So I would say for a competitor, I can only speak for the ones that I work with. I try to get their defense to be just rock solid. We start in bad positions. We start from, if you can get out of a bad spot and not be uncomfortable, that to me is huge. I think that has a big place in when you're training with, when you're training competitors and high level jiu-jitsu guys. I think Gordon Ryan, you see his like gym rolls, they're all like him kind of getting smashed. Like the ones that I've seen, it's him escaping a lot of the time. So what I mean is just the training has to kind of be toward the things that the athlete needs to work on. And on the strength side, I would say that minimum of three days a week strength training, need to incorporate some kind of recovery. I have pool programs that I do on recovery days. We do like FRC stuff on recovery days. We do, I have certain devices that I use. Some I think spine health is huge. I have, if you've ever seen my Instagram and stuff, I have a lot of like mobility routines that I think should be done daily, even if you're a professional. Even if you're a hobbyist, you should probably do it daily. Like your spine. Two things that I feel people in jiu-jitsu maybe don't emphasize enough of is spine health. And the other is, I know this is kind of like can get a little weird, but training your feet, your feet, training your feet to be able to transfer force properly. I've just been getting a little more into that recently, and I think it's more than just how high you can jump and stuff. If you have strong feet, you can absorb force better. You can. I think we're going to see in the coming years a lot more relevance to jiu-jitsu. A lot of the plyometric stuff, the hopping stuff. It can be incorporated into jiu-jitsu programs as well, and it should be incorporated into jiu-jitsu programs, not just for athleticism, but teaching you how to absorb force and generate force from the balls of your feet. I think it's super important. I think when you're doing any kind of pass, what are you doing? You're driving from the balls of your feet. How strong your feet are, I think is very important. How well you can move your spine is very important. I don't think any grappler doesn't have back pain, so
right.
Those are there's a lot of things, but those are all things I think are important.
That was a lot of stuff, man. I could go in a lot of directions there, but yeah, let's talk about the feet real quick, because I think, like calf training your calves, like jiu-jitsu guys I don't think any jiu-jitsu guy has ever done calf training. It's just like, it's something you don't do. And yeah, when you're playing guard, if you have an active like spider guard, or you have or a hook even, butterfly guard, reverse De La Riva, feet are super active. So that's a really interesting angle that a lot of people neglect.
Yeah. Have you ever felt like somebody's De La Riva hook that you just felt was like, this is crazy? How is this guy, like Rafa Mendes? If you've ever been in this guy's De La Riva, you felt what it felt like. It was like, it's an immovable object, basically.
Yeah.
Like, you can't get it off. He's stuck to you, and he can move you any way he wants. And, what is that? That's because he has strong feet. He has strong, obviously his positioning is perfect, but he has strong anterior tibialis tendon. He has strong big toe function. He can dorsiflex, with a lot of force. That's how, that's just one example, right? De La Riva. Another example would be if I try to footlock you and you have a really, really strong dorsiflexion. I can't, I've trained with guys that, I'm pretty good at, 2-on-1 type attacks, Kimuras, toe holds. I've trained with guys where you grab a toe hold and they put the boot on, they dorsiflex their foot, and you got to let go. It's just, there's no way you're going to overcome this. And and funny enough, the guys that I see that have this power are usually elite competitors. People like, I trained once with JT Torres, and I just was like, this is crazy. This guy's foot strength is insane. He's driving. How is he so strong? He's driving all this force into me. That's how he's so strong. And I think that's something that, strength trainers, people that are into strength training, strength conditioning coaches, they're maybe starting now to incorporate more. At least I am. That's one of the newer things that I'm starting to incorporate, isometrics and, being able to produce force from the ground.
Yeah. Awesome, man. That's great advice. So, if you're listening, start training your feet, look into making your, the muscles around your shins and your feet stronger. I think that's great advice.
Yeah. You mentioned calves too, Will. And, that's another one that's important. Plantar flexion is super important. I don't know how versed you are with leg locks, but I'm looking at people in the UFC getting tapped out by heel hooks and stuff. And it's just, you slip the heel, you got to slip the heel, right? That's how you get out of a heel hook. That's the first defense. And what is that? That's plantar flexion. If you can't there's a hand, but if you can't plantar flex your foot and point your toes, you're not going to be as good as a Craig Jones. Look at how people, get angles on him, and they do catch, him in leg locks too, but he just slips the heel. He has an insanely strong plantar flexion. And when you start seeing it, you won't be able to unsee it.
Could you, what are any exercises that come to mind just off the top of your head for strengthening up the feet?
Well, just even half raises for beginners would be fine. Just learning how to generate force off of the ball of the foot, just hopping up and down, hopping up and down would be good, as in like a jump rope, for example, right? Jump rope is not necessary. You can just do the jump rope motion without the rope and just learn how to absorb and generate force. Like any type of smash passing is really just generating force off the ground, right? If you really want to get the pass. Other things you can do for your feet, you can do towel curls are great. There's a lot of, like FRC has an exercise where you lift your big toe and then it kind of looks like this. You lift your big toe and then you lift your other toes. Just plantar flex, just holding an isometric dorsiflex or plantar flexion. Just if I'm sitting on the couch, sometimes I'll just point my toes and try to get it as flat as I can, and just thinking about slipping the heel. If I'm sitting on the couch, sometimes I'll just hold an isometric dorsiflexion. I just hold that position. I'll work my anterior tib tendon. I'll work my the front of my shins. Those are all ways you can strengthen the feet. Walking barefoot, certain things that I do also, like, for example, I tend to wear wide box shoes and toe socks so I can move my toes. And also, so inside the shoe, my feet aren't like this.
Gotcha.
To begin with, I have to do this, the ability to actually like shorten your short foot, and generate power off of that, I think is just really important. If you watch any, I just watched one of Nicky Rod's matches, right? Watch this guy's feet. When he drives off the ground, his foot goes from this, which is kind of like, how everybody's foot is, to wide. This.
Right.
Yeah. To wide to small. And then his big toe and his other toes curl into the ground. And that is how he's generating a lot of this force.
Wow.
A lot of his wrestling is I believe it comes from that, obviously his rest of his body is well developed, but it all has to come from someplace, right? How is anybody generating force from a standing position? It comes from the floor up and then into your opponent. So, yeah.
That's awesome stuff, man. I know I had a knee injury and I was going to physical therapy and the doctor was telling me to really work my feet. So I was doing a lot of those exercises you just talked about. And when you start to feel, first of all, my feet, when you start training your feet, you're like, holy cow, my feet are so weak. You just, you can bear, like, the neurological connection between some of the muscles in your feet. You're just like, they're dead, they're gone. But once you start waking those things up and you start strengthening them, you feel stronger all the way up the chain, man. Your connection to the ground, your legs feel stronger. You just feel like more capable when your feet are strong. So overall, that's awesome advice.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you, you touched on isometrics a little bit earlier about how you started incorporating those. And I feel like this is another kind of neglected thing, but very useful for jiu-jitsu athletes. Can you talk about those a little bit?
Sure. So, isometric training, everybody knows what it is. Hopefully there's two types. One is yielding, which would be like if I were to hold a bar in front of me, like in a curl, like I'm curling a bar, I'm holding my elbows in like a 90-degree position and just trying to hold it there. That would be a yielding isometric exercise because, I am yielding I will eventually have to yield to the weight I get. Maybe that's why they get the name. And then the other one is overcoming isometric exercises. So yielding was the first example, and then overcoming. Overcoming is basically when an example would be like if I tied a rope to a tree and tried to pull the tree out of the ground. That's an external cue that I use for my athletes. obviously I can't pull the tree off the ground unless the tree is tiny, but it's usually a huge tree. I'm trying to pull, and what I'm doing is I'm trying to overcome the whatever it is I'm pulling or pushing. It could be anything. It could be a leg press against the wall. It could be a push against the wall. And isometric training, I got interested in because somebody I met online is a good friend of mine now, Brad Thorpe. He is a guy who is just like the isometric. He's like all in on isometric training. He's got devices and all this stuff. And I had him out to my academy for a seminar, and I was like, wow, this is, I did all these isometric things, and I feel this crazy kind of soreness, like, if you ever done like an exercise for the first time, right? You get this soreness that's like, what? This is weird. I don't know why I have this. Except I had it like everywhere. I had it in like my glutes, like it was a very strange feeling. And so I started to do it. I was like, oh man, like this should make this. Why does nobody do this? And I started incorporating a lot of it into my own training and training with my athletes, both kinds of isometric holds, both yielding and overcoming. I think that jiu-jitsu athletes would benefit, and wrestlers and MMA combat sports would benefit more from the overcoming isometric exercises. So for example, that wall push, pushing against an immovable object, pulling against an immovable object. Because what is that? That's basically wrestling. That's like, when you're pushing against a wall, trying to move that wall, you're creating this like total body stiffness that you don't really get from certain weightlifting exercise. You can probably get it, if you combined everything, but I just don't feel the same thing. And also, people that have never pushed a wall before, try pushing a wall for 30 seconds. And the first couple times I did, I felt incredibly weak. I was like, how am I this weak? I can't generate any force. And now I've trained myself where I actually know how to generate the force, right? And that's something that should have a direct transfer to standing combat sports, right? Because it's the force vector is the same. You're pushing against something that is maybe not immovable, but they're very, very difficult to move.
Right.
So it's similar. So yeah, isometrics. I like holding, for example, I like holding a dumbbell split squat, so kind of like a lunge, and just putting fairly heavy dumbbells to the sides and just holding that position. Sometimes even getting up to the ball of the foot and the front foot just to drive off the ground. Those are all things that I think have benefits. And I can't pull up randomized control trials for you right now, but there's just something with like, if you can control and stabilize your body in a position, there's something about that where your movement quality and the way that you do things just somehow improves. It's hard to explain, but I wasn't able to really hold a split squat even with my body weight. I'm relatively heavy. I'm like 205, and last year, and I was wrestling. I was in a community college. I wasn't a student, but I was just going with one of my athletes, and we were wrestling in the wrestling room. And I was like, man, my wrestling sucks. I can't shoot. My wrestling shot is terrible. I started doing these isometric holds and stuff. My movement just got better, and I didn't train any wrestling because COVID. So something had to have happened there, right? And I think what it was just the quality of my movement got better. And I know that's kind of like a loaded term, but you just move better when you can control your body in a static position, and hopefully that makes sense.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, like, how often in jiu-jitsu are you holding an isometric contraction? Like you're holding someone in side control, or you're pushing against somebody and they're just not moving. Like that, jiu-jitsu is a lot of isometric contractions. So how would you program that into like a strength and conditioning session? Would that be like the first thing you do? Would that be after? Like, heavy lifting, or how does that fit into it?
That's something that I think is at this point, we don't know. I think that's more of an art than a science right now. Just based off of, I've tried to read a lot of research on this, and it just doesn't exist. Programming that is looking into how to incorporate a specific modality, there's no research on this. But how I do it is, I tend to do the big lower body compound lifts first. I just think those are the most taxing. Squat, deadlift, hinge, and squat, I think should be in the beginning of the program for the most part. Biggest muscle groups. You need to be fresh when doing those. Then I usually will do another lower body accessory exercise like a lunge, something like that, or a hip thrust or a bridge. Then I'll go down the chain a little more, work on some lower limb stuff like the calf work, the footwork, stuff like that. And then it just depends on, for now, I'm really only focusing on upper body isometrics. I'm going to start experimenting with lower body a little more. But really, I'm only doing, I'm trying to keep it to the ones that I'm familiar with. So the lunge, holding the dumbbells inside for the split squat. But I'm going to start experimenting soon with that, and I'll have a better answer soon. With the upper body, I'm a little, I'm a little better versed because I've been incorporating it a lot more. I think, so for example, when I do like an isometric wall push, right, you're kind of activating a lot of muscles there too, right? So you're getting this total body tension, you're pushing, you're activating. If you're doing it right, I've done wall push with a couple people, they just lean their weight in and there's some weird stuff going on. But when you're pushing, you should be pushing with the muscles that are responsible for pushing, right? So chest, shoulders, triceps, you use a little bit of your glutes, your lower body too. There's a lot of leg drive in there. So you're activating those muscles, right? So when I'm doing a push, I tend to follow that isometric push with something that that's in the same muscle group. So for example, triceps, I'll go to tricep work afterwards. I'll go to, a floor press afterward, something like that. Because again, the muscles are activated, and I like to keep the isometric stuff in the beginning. Is, for example, like upper body, right? I like to keep it in the beginning of the upper body workout because it's very taxing. You don't want to really be doing them when you're super gassed, because you're not going to be able to generate the amount of force that you want. I want the athlete to generate. I tell the athletes that I work with, push through the wall. Imagine you're going to push the wall down. That's the external cue I use. And, afterwards their shoulders, their chest, their triceps are pretty lit up. We go do some triceps work. We do some pressing work. And that's how I like to program it. Same with the pulls. Pulls, just imagine pulling isometric work and then doing something like a row or, biceps, things like that.
Gotcha, man. That sounds awesome. So it sounds like it might be a little bit experimental at this point with the isometric.
It is, yes.
But definitely well worth it to add to your routine. I want to switch it up now a little bit, and I know you have a product on weight cutting. Now, cutting weight is not, it's not something that is for the hobbyist. They really need to worry about too much unless you're going to compete and you need to lose weight. But can you just give us some of like the biggest mistakes you see with people when they want to, cut weight to make a certain division?
Okay. Well, this is a pretty big topic, Will. So I have an entire, I don't even know how many pages this thing is, but it's got like 100, references, and it's probably like 300 pages at this point. I don't know, but it's long. But man, I could literally sit here for the next 24 hours and tell you the mistakes that people make cutting weight. It's such a long list. But let's just start with easiest and most practical. I would say the most practical, the most common that I see is not taking care of your fiber intake, not clearing out gut contents. it's not really a mistake. It's more of like something that could be done that people don't do or don't know about. And I think that, I guess that does make it a mistake if they don't do it. But yeah, so when you have a healthy diet, you eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, you tend to have a lot of food stored up in your large intestine. So by going on now a low or a very low or no fiber diet for 3 days, usually do about 3 to 4 days, naturally lose, it could be a lot of weight. It could be up to 5 pounds for some people. So a big guy, 300-pounder that's eating a ton of broccoli all day is going to lose like probably 2 to 3 kilos. That's one thing. If you're just looking, if you're doing a jiu-jitsu tournament and you need to cut 3 pounds in like 5 days, right? Something easy that you could do is just take the fiber out of your diet and that's it. You don't need to water load. You don't need to do all these things. If it's just a small amount of weight, fiber will be enough, and that's one thing that people can do. I want to answer your question about like a mistake though. Yes. So, like a real mistake I see people do, not an opportunity that they could do is coming to a weight cut without any kind of preparation whatsoever. So this is a pretty, again, like I said in the beginning, this is a pretty big topic, but when my athletes are have a date set for their fight, there's a lot of prep work. We have a water loading protocol. We have a heat acclimation protocol. We have what else? We have we may have to deplete glycogen. We might have to lower our carbohydrate. There's so many things that we may need to do. Want to decrease sodium, but it depends on the individual, how much time we have, how much weight we have to cut, all that. I've seen people show up the Tuesday of the fight, 20 pounds overweight with zero prep. So that means one thing. That means basically the large majority of their weight cut process is going to have to be dehydration now. There's almost no time to cut fiber. There may be time if it's Tuesday, but if it's Thursday, it's over. It's now you have to lose 20 pounds in a hot bath, and you have to go on basically a fasting protocol. That's it. And that's probably the biggest mistake is people show up and try to lose 20 pounds with one method. And that one method is like the method that I use at the end of the protocol just to carve off 5 pounds maybe. Most of the time my athletes wake up the morning of the fight either on weight or we do a hot 20-minute hot bath and they're on weight, 2 to 3 pounds. So the mistake would be having zero prep and relying on one method.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's a big one where, everyone just tries to cut in the last few days. Like if you have an event coming up, do it gradually. It's so much more safer to get there if you give yourself more time to lose the weight over time. Instead of these drastic cuts the day before or something like that. So, what would you say to somebody? What's your best advice for somebody who wants to gain a little weight to try to bulk up for maybe a heavier weight class?
So somebody this actually is pretty common. I've had jiu-jitsu athletes that were just a little too far from cutting the weight. That's usually like same day weigh-in. You can't be cutting 6 pounds, same day weigh-in. It just is too much for most people. So we have to bump up to the next weight class, and sometimes that's like 8 pounds above where they are. Jiu-jitsu doesn't really have the most, it's not like every 10 pounds. Sometimes it's 20 something, it's almost 20 pounds. Right. So gaining weight, obviously, food intake, you can eat a little more food. This is an opportunity to fully get your glycogen stores to full. So, hopefully we have time, right? It's not, right before the competition. The night before we can do some loading of carbohydrates. We can make sure we have electrolytes. We make sure that, our water intake, hydration is there. But gaining weight, let's see, I'm trying to think back at the times that it's happened. If it's jiu-jitsu, and sometimes I have my athlete put on a heavier gi, sometimes that is an advantage, if you have a very, and you do jiu-jitsu, right? Well, you're black belt. You're black belt.
Brown belt.
You're brown belt. So yeah, same. Like it depends on who you are, but if I have a heavy, like a double weave collar gi, it's harder for you to choke. It's just the truth. The easiest gi to get choked out in is like a thin Vulcan. You wear that gi, you're going to get choked out. So sometimes it's changing the attire. If it's jiu-jitsu, if it's MMA, there's not much you can do. I just make sure that the athlete is fully hydrated and well fed. There's no reason to gain any weight, really, if we don't need it. It could actually be detrimental, So we don't generally try to gain too much weight if we're couple pounds short.
Gotcha. What about supplements? I saw that you recommended a few supplements. By the way, to the listeners, go check out Coach Ben's YouTube channel. He's got a ton of awesome content on his YouTube channel. But I think on there I saw some recommended supplements. Can you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, it depends on what the goal is, right? General health. I would say, most people are deficient in, vitamin D, vitamin K, potassium. Don't take potassium, by the way. Supplement in your diet. Don't take the pills. Apparently, there's some danger of death, so don't do it. I think that the reason why they sell them in 99 milligrams is because it would be very hard to kill yourself with 99 milligrams of potassium, Gotcha. But there's a reason they do that. You cannot find, in at least the US, potassium tablets or pills. They're above 99 milligrams, not grams. And that's the reason it's dangerous. So I was saying potassium, vitamin K, vitamin D, magnesium. These are the common deficiencies that are pretty universal for general health. Whether or not you believe fish oil has any benefits, I do take it personally, and I recommend my athletes take it or eat fish 2 to 3 times a week, oily fish. Let's see, general health. I would say creatine is at this point is a general health supplement. There's a lot of brain, Alzheimer's. There's obviously muscle and strength benefits, power, things like that. When you're kind of getting over to performance, I'm just kind of peeking over at the supplements that I got. When you're going over to performance, there's not that many that work, at least that have the research behind it. Caffeine, depending on who you are, beta alanine. There's I don't like this supplement, but like sodium bicarbonate. I still haven't figured out how to take it properly without just shitting instantly. So it's just for performance. It's creatine, caffeine, beta alanine. If you want to get a little more just in there, I do take tyrosine sometimes when I'm like extremely tired. I take 3 grams of tyrosine to just get you up immediately with caffeine. If I know I'm going to be training with somebody like I was training with a Bellator guy the other day, and it was just like I knew this was going to be a hard training session. I couldn't be, not on my game. So took some of that. And
tyrosine, if you want to get like the full benefit of tyrosine, you should take it with caffeine, right?
I didn't know that, but that's I've always taken it with caffeine, because if I'm going to take any kind of booster or a pre-workout type thing, it always has to have caffeine. So you're telling me, I don't know.
Right on. I think I read that.
I do. Let me grab this real quick.
For sure.
I have this stuff. This is the only other thing that it's experimental. I've seen the research, and the research looks good. Chad Macias. I don't know if you know Chad. He recommends it. He's the most science guy I know. It's this Lactigo.
Huh.
Yeah. So that? This is kind of like this is like you know what? I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't know too much about like the exact mechanisms of it, but it's basically carnosine gel. So what it is it's carnosine gel. And I, in the beginning, I was like, this is horse crap. It's for sure. It just doesn't work. It's garbage. And then I looked into the studies that Chad did and I started using it. And I was like, man, you know, it could be placebo. It's still probably garbage. No way it works. Can't possibly penetrate the skin. I don't know, you know, but this is something that, you know, I've been using, my athletes use, and, you know, I'm good, you know.
Does it help with like lactic acid? Is that the idea?
That's exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's a lactic acid buffer, I think, something like that. But it's not sodium bicarbonate. That stuff doesn't work transdermally. It's something else. I mean, people need to do their own research. All right. But look up Lactigo. I've used it as a performance enhancer. You know, it's the only thing that really helps my low back when I'm doing jiu-jitsu, because I'm overusing my low back, you know, because it's getting fatigued. And you know, it is what it is. That's the only other, I guess you could call this like an esoteric supplement, right? Gotcha. So of all the general health supplements that you probably should be taking first, right? If we have a pyramid, right? Yeah. Probably like a multi, you know, magnesium, you know, zinc, things like that, you know. And then at the very tip, after you've passed like tyrosine, then you can start adding Lactigo. And, you know, I'll send you the research later. I'm the biggest skeptic when it comes to these weird things, right? But, you know, it's the same with what we talked about earlier with the isometric training. Sometimes when you just are in the trenches and you do it all the time, yeah, you just figure things out, you know, and that's kind of like one of my philosophies is I don't like to copy people too much because that's their path, you know, that's how they found success. And I'd rather go out there with the science, you know, backing me up, but I'd rather go out there flailing and figure it out for myself, because when I figure it out, I'll have figured it out, you know, right. As opposed to copy somebody else's list of supplements and just say, all right, this is boom, let's just do it. So I experiment a lot. At least I have been experimenting a lot these years. You know, old me would have not.
I think you could say the same about jiu-jitsu, right? Like jiu-jitsu is a very individual path. You got to find what works for you. Like you can't just replicate your coach's game, because he's got a whole different, you know, system. You know, he's got a different body structure. He's got just so many different factors. So I think that the tip there is to experiment, see what works for you. And even if, you know, the placebo effect is real, if you think it works and you feel it works, then it freaking works, right?
Yeah, I don't talk my athletes out of like alkaline water. You know, look, I might even think it tastes good and makes me feel good too, you know, whatever. But obviously the science doesn't back up a lot of these things. Right. But I'm not one of these like debunkers, you know. I think people who are stuck in that debunking world, they're never innovating anything. You know, they're always debunking. And that, you know, I used to be that guy and I get it, you know, but what you said about jiu-jitsu was perfect. You know, that thing of you have to find your own way or own path to make it work. And I would argue that your instructor, especially if he's extremely talented and not like a coach, you know, somebody like Rafa Mendes, I'll just use Rafa as an example again. You know Rafa, right? Obviously.
Of course, yeah.
I don't think he knows what he's doing. I don't think he knows how to teach it, is what I mean. He knows what he's doing, but he has figured out for him. Have we ever seen another Rafa Mendes? Not even his brother is like him, right? His brother has a different game, right? So for you to go out there and emulate somebody like Rafa instead of go out there and try to just flail around and figure it out using maybe him as motivation, you're not gonna have as much success. Even Hoffa's best student, I don't think is even near him, as far as replicating his style. His students may surpass him, but they will surpass him with their style. I don't think somebody's gonna take Hoffa's blueprint of jiu-jitsu. You do the knee, the knee slice this way, and you do the leg drag this way. That's not how you get better at things. That's not how innovation is done. And I would argue that he doesn't even know how to do what he's doing. And he definitely doesn't know how to teach it, or else everybody would be like him. I think that's like an important thing for coaches to understand, is that if you copy somebody, you may only be average. But if you innovate something, or if you figured something out on your own for yourself, not only have you probably taken care of that, whatever you're trying to figure out for good, you've done something that works for you. And yeah, the tricky part is trying to explain that to somebody else, your students, which you can't either, because you don't know what you did.
Yeah.
The things you're greatest at, you have no idea how you do them. Ask any great artist. We're all kind of like artists, right? If you're a strength coach, you're an artist. You have to put together the program. That's the art. So,
man, that's great advice, because I didn't really realize that until like I was late into purple belt, where I was like, I have the ability, like, what do they call it in high school? It was like poetic license, right? Like, you have the freedom to go out there and explore stuff. You don't have to follow what your coach is telling you. Like, he's giving you the building blocks, but you have the ability to go and run with it, and that's where I think big breakthroughs happen. That's when you really start to excel. So, and like you said,
that's when you figure it out.
Yeah, you understand it, and then that's when you've kind of you're approaching mastery at that point. So,
yep. You said purple belt. You figured that out?
Yeah, I mean, when I got to jiu-jitsu, I was like, okay, this guy who's my coach, he knows everything. I just need to do what he says. And like, I was never really thought to like, oh, I need to go and explore stuff, and like I can put my own flair on things. It's like, okay, I always thought, okay, no, this is the move, and that's how it's done, and these are the steps, and you got to follow the steps. And then when I started kind of like playing a little bit more, I was like, wow, but a lot of times I think when you come to jiu-jitsu, you don't realize that. You think, okay, I'm going to learn a martial art, and there's rules to this martial art, and that's how the technique is done, and that's it. But when you hit
this is my coach,
right? I'm
going to do everything exactly like him because he's better than me. That's not an insult to your coach to do something different. Like if they're teaching something and you just, it doesn't work for you, but this works for you. That's not an insult. That's actually a good thing. That it shows that you have a good coach. If your coach is willing to see that and be like, whoa, this is great. I like what you're doing, And some, probably the best coach you could find is somebody that actually understands that, that's something that understands that they don't even know probably what they're best at. Like I think I have a very good Kimura, right? People will say I have a good Kimura. None of my students can do the Kimura like me. So what does that tell you? It tells you that there are hidden details that I may think I know, but I don't know. I cannot transfer that skill. And I may think, oh, well, this is how you do it, right? But I'm really giving like my students the highlights of what I'm doing. What I'm really doing, do I even know? I don't think so. I really don't. And I see the reason I can say that is because I've seen it at the highest level. I've asked professional golfers, how they do things, and they're giving me the highlights. I'm like, that's really, you sure? That's because I'm watching you do it, and that's not how you do it, but you're explaining it to me that way. One of the best judo guys, this guy, Takahashi, I don't know his last name. He's Tenri Judo. He's in like downtown LA. He teaches his best move is the Uchimata, right? So he teaches the Uchimata beautifully, exactly how you're supposed to teach it. You kazushi, you pull, you step in with the 3 steps, you lift your leg. He demonstrates it for the class. Beautiful. He doesn't do it that way, but he teaches it that way. Right. I see him in competition. He does one hop and he launches you like a brick. That's it. That's how he does it. you're not going to learn the move from the highlights or his teaching. Right. You're going to learn the move when you're not even going to learn the move by watching him do it. You're going to learn the move when you figure out how to do the move that works for you.
Right. So. 100%, man. That's great advice. I want to wrap it up. I know there was one thing I wanted to talk to you about, lower back pain. You talked about it, referenced it a couple of times in the podcast, but I will leave that for another day because I feel like we could do an entire episode just on lower back pain.
Yeah, pain's a big subject, man.
So we'll save that. But what would be your final piece of advice for somebody who is looking to get an edge in jiu-jitsu by doing strength and conditioning or something off the mat?
Looking to get an edge in jiu-jitsu off by doing something off the mat. So I think first I would just kind of go inward with that question is it might be the wrong question to ask. It might be that the way to get an edge in jiu-jitsu is to spend more time doing jiu-jitsu. There are a lot of people that ask me that, not in the way that you have. You asked it pretty elegantly, but most people will just ask me something like, "Hey, will rock climbing help jiu-jitsu? Will yoga? Should I do yoga on the weekend? Should I do this thing? Should I, have this tool or this?" Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times, I would just put it this way: I think a lot of the big rocks and the things that need to be done aren't taken care of, and people are kind of worried about the tricks or hacks when all it is it's just consistency, man. It's just consistency. It does not matter what you do, but just do it consistently. If you're going to start yoga this weekend and you think it's going to benefit your jiu-jitsu, great. Are you going to be doing that a year from now? If not, then why did you start today? It's not moving. You're not getting to a goal. And I think that Kaizen mindset, Kaizen is continuous growth. That mindset is important in all things. And something that you do to outside of jiu-jitsu to get an edge in jiu-jitsu, it should be something that you would do anyway. If you're doing it just to get an edge in jiu-jitsu, I don't think it's going to work because that's not how you build a habit. You're going to have no passion. You're going to have no obsession. I would tell somebody, if you're going to do something outside jiu-jitsu, find something that you're obsessive and passionate about as much as jiu-jitsu and do that thing. For me, let me see. I do a lot of things outside jiu-jitsu, but I'm not that concerned of like getting better at jiu-jitsu, like as a primary goal, right? I have a business. I kind of am a coach mostly. So for me, the things that I do that directly benefit jiu-jitsu would be strength training. I do strength train. I do isometrics. I do a lot of things that benefit jiu-jitsu. But the point I'm trying to make is that I would do those things anyway because I'm obsessed with that thing. I'm obsessed with strength training. If you want to do something that supplements your jiu-jitsu, you should stack that skill on top of jiu-jitsu. It should be another hobby that you're maybe you don't want to be the best in the world, but you should really enjoy doing it, right? It could be yoga, it could be anything. I relate that question to kind of sometimes athletes will ask me, random weird stuff like, hey, should I wear compression socks when I'm on the plane? and I'm like, you texted me at 4 a.m. How many hours of sleep did you get? I didn't sleep yet. I stayed up all night. I'd be like, well, you're talking about compression socks and you slept 0 hours, 2 hours last night. You should be sleeping, your 10 hours, 8 to 10 hours. And that's similar to, if you're looking for things outside of jiu-jitsu to improve your jiu-jitsu, it needs to, you better love it. Because if you don't, and you're just doing it for jiu-jitsu, you probably should just be doing more jiu-jitsu.
That was great advice, man. My takeaway there is if you want to do something to help your jiu-jitsu, do something that you like, that you're going to stick with, and that you can be consistent with, because then it will
100%
actually
consistency.
All right. There it is. Coach, where can people go to learn more about you, find out if they want to, train with you or anything like that?
Instagram is probably the best. I hate seeing that one thing pop up, that red one pop up when you get a message. So I clear those messages as soon as possible. At Coach BZ. You can email me, ben@schoolbjj.com. If you want to contact me, it's easy. I'm not one of these guys that can't. You reached out to me like a couple days ago, and we're doing this interview. I like to get things done quickly. Thank you for letting me do it so quick, actually, because if we put it off till next week, I would have had 10 different things going on in my head, and I didn't want to, I didn't want to lose track.
No, this was great, man. I feel like I could talk to you for much longer. So would love to have you as a guest again. But thank you so much for your time today, man. And I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Will.
All right, brother. Well, take care. All right, guys, there you have it. Another awesome podcast with Coach Ben Z. Be sure to check him out. The best way to get in contact with him is to contact him on Instagram. He's at Coach BZ. He's also got a bunch of free material on his Instagram that is very useful for grapplers. So definitely check him out on Instagram. I thought the stuff on training your feet was super interesting. I'm definitely going to start getting back into the feet training, isometric training. Sorry about the cutouts there. Wasn't our internet connection was a little unstable, but we made it work. So thank you guys for listening. As always, check us out at seekprogress.com. Follow us on Instagram at seek.progress, and we will see you guys on the next episode.